A game of two very distinct halves on Perspective this week, with some reflection on his time in office from outgoing Tynwald President Laurence Skelly, and one man's crusade against the sellout appearance of Katie Hopkins at the Gaiety. What makes a good president, and is it frustrating at times? And is the government selling out on its stated principles by allowing outspoken comic Katie Hopkins to appear in a government-run facility? We'll begin with Laurence Skelly and his 15 years in Tynwald. Talking still to the president of Tynwald, but not for much longer.
Indeed. Come Tuesday, Tynwald will vote for a new president for the next 5 years, which is as it is in the standing orders.
And, well, I suppose the obvious question, have you enjoyed being president of Tynwald?
There really is no greater honour as I think serving first and foremost as an MHK, and obviously being elevated to minister, and now of course as the president, there really is no greater honour as a Manxman serving. And people have asked me this question, about what have I enjoyed, what sort of stood out, and and inevitably you do reflect. And the first thing that comes to my mind is the very first time walking outside that Royal Chapel, and you look down that processional way and you see the procession, you see the reeds, you see the hill, and the hairs on the back of your neck, and that initial it's just a massive pride runs through you about being in this position and being Manx and what it really means. Our Parliament and Tynwald and the history and the heritage. And now being part of that, you sort of feel you really need to step up. And thankfully, I've been had a support of the good people of Russia and the island, and now my peers at the time for being president. It's a great honour, no greater honour.
And you mentioned that about walking down Tynwald. Obviously, I haven't done for the last 10 years. I hadn't done for the last 10 years, but there was, not this year, but the year before, I was invited as a guest. And I had forgotten just how incredibly moving that is. It's such a feeling of connection with tradition and to all the things that we hold dear as Manx people.
Indeed, you mentioned tradition, and it really is identity, isn't it? We brand this thing the oldest continuous parliament in the world, and it is Tynwald Day, and there's been it just really fills you with immense pride. But Tynwald Day has changed, hasn't it? In some ways, I think about how people celebrate it. I used to live in America, and of course, we'd be part of the North American Manx Association. We'd have our own Tynwald Day parties, and people on the island do that as well. Some people are traditionalists, come and watch the actual event, the ceremony, and so forth. But you got the Fairfield, which is buzzing, and some of the changes made this year, I think, was fantastic. Blenhegill, with the year of the Manx, promoting that. And that was a standout for me today. This particular Tynwald is to hear so much Manx. We've heard it, obviously, His Excellency on the Hill the last few years, which is wonderful. I've introduced more in the chapel myself. And then we hear the clergy actually using it extensively this year and recognising that. And again, that all comes down to recognising our identity, the uniqueness of the Manx, and promoting that around the world. But going back to, the celebration of Tynwald Day, I just think of all the things that go on around it. The Arboretum, people come and bring picnics. They could just come in the afternoon. Lots of people come in the evening. The music, the ceilidh, which I really enjoy, and sadly didn't get to do this year the way the scheduling worked. But I look forward to doing more of that in future.
And do you remember the terror that you had as an MHK the first few years of whether you'd end up in the wrong place in the line of MHKs going on or off the hill, whether you'd end up in the wrong seat, all of that sort of thing, because it's not quite straightforward, is it?
No, it is not quite straightforward, and I had two members that were very close to me. Said follow.
Giving helpful advice.
Yes, that's what always worried me, to be quite honest with you. Helpful advice. I sat in between the pair of you, and I got lots of helpful advice from both sides. And what is it the old Manx saying? Listen with each ear, then make judgment. So I had to exercise that a few times. Yeah, no, it is, and of course, that is all part and parcel of it, the procession. So a great immense pride, and doing it for the last time as president of Tynwald, will be with me to the end of my days.
And it definitely is the last time. I mean, there's no thoughts of a comeback at some point?
No. And I just feel the timing is right, and, having that opportunity to say, right, well, this is sort of the end of a chapter, really. I've been very fortunate and so lucky to do the jobs I've done, politically. When I came in, I sort of came in with the view, I said, I'll do any job that I'm asked to do. And I did, felt I'd done that from taking on chairman of planning, which I thought was one of the best jobs ever in terms of learning as a politician. There's no hiding. You have to do your homework. You've got to make a decision that's going to affect people's lives. So that was probably one of the best jobs in terms of learning political understanding and the role that you're here to make decisions, for the people. But, DOI minister, like your good self, was only there for a very short time, but I did work in a department for a year plus, and enterprise, of course, whereas for a good number of years. And so I've been very lucky and fortunate to do the jobs I've done, and hopefully, contributed positively, and only time will tell, if that is the case. And
obviously there's an election coming up, which is why ultimately you're stepping down, being replaced. What advice would you give to people either thinking of becoming an MHK, already put their names in the hat for the first time, wanting to become an MHK, or indeed to the sitting members? What advice would you give them?
It's a good question, really, because I have certainly spoken to a number of people who have thought about it. Some of them already declared, others decided not. And the first thing I say to anyone considering it is, have you got the support of your family and your close friends? Because you need support. There's no doubt about it. Without that, it is more difficult. Not to say you can't do it, but it is more difficult. So family support, and then the other thing is you're looking to really gain the trust of people. You may have ideas, but the reality is those ideas may not be realistic or achievable, and you may not know that until you do get elected, and then recognise that that may not be possible. But you've got to have some humility there from that point of view, and humility is there to say, you don't always get things right, recognise that, and be prepared to change your mind, because you don't know everything when you come in as a member. And the other word I was thinking about is integrity, and maintain those strong morals that you have in government. They have what they call the Nolan principles, I think it is, and and the good moral principles. You can be your faith as well, so you stand by those, humility and integrity. And I think you'll be a good politician for the people you represent.
And I guess the other thing is be prepared to, be surprised and actually have to maybe rethink some of the way that you were thinking, because certainly my experience going into politics for the first time, things were quite a lot different than you might have expected.
Indeed, and you must recognise that you're only one member. We predominantly govern by consensus, which means you've got to get people to come along with you. Your first objective is to get the public to support you, to trust you, and you got their trust to make the right decision for them. And sometimes it's about what people need, not necessarily what they want, because again, they may not know what is actually needed. And once you get things in and understand, get under the covers, and you recognise that point. But yes, it is important to take on board that point, that you've got to bring people with you. And when you become a member, you've got to bring members with you as well at the same time. And you've got to start building consensus and understand. And this is where the give and take is, where you find policies and strategies, end up.
I mean, you'll remember when you were first elected, we still had people with big, extensive experience of being in Tynwald, who knew how to make cracking speeches. latterly, there seems to be a lot of written speeches, pre-prepared speeches, which, if politics is about influencing, which I think it is, I think that's the whole point of having MHKs, is to influence. So your job is not necessarily to run things. I think that's often a mistake that people make. Your job is to provide leadership and to persuade people why what you're saying is the right thing. Do you think sometimes that's lost in Tynwald these days, where pre-prepared speeches don't really give the opportunity for you to actually engage with the debate?
Yeah, it's kind of the reflection I have there, Phil, is about coming out of COVID. Where COVID we managed to conduct and procedurally, we did what we needed to do. But in reality, is about reading the room. So when you're in the heat of a debate and you have somebody particularly give a passionate contribution, that can sway you. And does and should, sway you, because, but having said that, being prepared is important.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. You can't, and with the order papers that they are, you never really have enough reading time. And that's the one thing I guard, particularly new members about, always keep enough time, block time for reading time. And I guess the careful thing today is, with the advancements of technology, AI and so forth, don't be over-reliant on that. It can be a useful tool, like any research tool can be useful, but you've got to form your own opinion. And this is about a vision. You politicians, people look to you to have a vision of what you want and how you can achieve it, because again, politics is not a science, it's an art. So it's about the art of what's possible, but it starts with that vision, and it certainly starts with that passion. So you got to, what you say there is absolutely right about speaking from your heart and what you really feel passionate about. So that's really, really important, I'd say.
And of course, having said all that, there have been some cracking speeches in Tynwald lately. I was particularly impressed with Sarah Maltby's last speech about horse trams, which was not only humorous, entertaining, but it had some real good points to it. And, I don't know how many people it would convince, because I suspect members either know that they're for or they know that they're against.
Yes, and of course the longest debates are the ones that everyone agrees on. We often find, but that's because they want to, say something positive, I guess, about it. But politics and debate is about understanding both sides, and it gets back. If I come back to that old man saying, "Listen with each ear, then make judgment." It is very, very important, and that's your role, I think, as a politician. You've got to go out and not just get the views that you support, that go along with what you're thinking and what you envisage, but you want to understand all aspects of it and then make that decision. So it is a challenging role, and these challenging times, and now I think the access of the politicians, with social media and so forth, it is even more challenging. But my counsel there is, just be very careful and try not to rush decisions. There's always an opportunity to wait and do a little bit more research and understanding before you press that button, because when you do press that button, you are now accountable, and you should know what your reason and your rationale for pressing that button, yay or nay.
How many times over the last 5 years have you thought, gosh, I really wish I could say something here?
Well, all past presidents have told me the very same thing. Prepare to be a little frustrated. I guess the word is restraint, isn't it? And you can understand where people are coming from, because of course you've been there. But yes, you do. But you've got to remain impartial, and that is it does take time to really rest with you and make sure you do remain impartial, because you have to really think about that. And you might have said something in support or against something that's on the floor, but now you are 100% impartial, and therefore, and I think it's the referee, the footballing terms. Somebody has said you are a referee. You've got to make sure government has a fair crack. You've got to make sure the backbenchers have a fair crack, and they play the policy and not the person playing the ball.
And not only are you the ref, but you also do the VAR.
The VAR, yes, there is that, and the VAR, of course, is conferring with the clerks. So so there's certain things where you have discretion, definitely, and again, just like any politician making a decision, do we have this right? Do we have what do you think? So sometimes, you do that conferring, and that's a good thing to do. Again, stop and reflect, isn't it? And that's a bit like legislation. Why we have an upper house. I just did a tour here this morning and explained, well, why do you need an upper house? Well, they're there to do the scrutiny, because the MHKs, are very busy people and ministers, etc. They may not have got it right, and they do the scrutiny. So stop and reflect is a good thing.
Did we miss a trick, or did they miss a trick all those decades ago when the role of president was created? Should at that time we not have collectively agreed that you only need one presiding officer? You can have Legco sitting on a separate day to Keys, so the presiding officer sits in Keys on the Tuesday, maybe Legco on the Wednesday, and then in Tynwald. And effectively, that would allow the 24 members of the House of Keys to fulfil their roles as completely as MHKs, both in the Keys chamber and the Tynwald chamber.
Yeah, I can see the rationale for that argument, and it's obviously coming up for debate. And it's probably the one thing that this administration hasn't done is the structure of Tynwald. Of course, we had the debate around the Attorney General, the Bishop. These are individual roles, and now this is about the President. So we haven't had that wide. This administration has not had that wider debate about the structure of Tynwald and the arguments for why a single presiding officer could work and how it could work, versus the system that it is. So I'll listen with interest with what the views are, with members on that. But the time to do that, we're at the end of administration. Usually is perhaps the beginning of an administration would be real opportunity to have that wider debate. But usually events overtake, and it is very much what is the issues of the day. So,
because of course the other thing that's being discussed is whether we should have a limitation on how long a presiding officer sits. Is there any merit in that suggestion?
Yeah, I guess again it's a political one. I'll listen with interest. Exercising the impartiality there. But yes, it is an interesting one. As we've seen, we've had two. I'm only the fifth, so two presidents are 10 years, and the remaining 3 are 5 years. So and again, it's all about timing. Politics is all about timing. Where you are in your career and where you want to go, really. So yes, I'll listen with interest, shall we say.
In terms then of the role, what are the skills that you think? Obviously the obvious stuff about impartiality, but what else do you have to do as a president, would you say?
Yeah, it's a good question. You do certainly a certain amount of ambassadorial activities, which is important, I would say, because doing that role and the recognition of the stature of the role, which of course we just had last week with the King visiting the island. So it's there is significant role there, but there's also welfare too. I mentioned impartiality there, but with regards to members, because you are impartial, therefore politicians, it's often said, who do they turn to have some impartial advice, but somebody who understands politics, and that's where I think the president, does have a positive and active role to offer to members, which is unseen really, but it is an activity and can be quite extensive, shall we say.
I didn't see what you said when you welcomed the King. I guess it wasn't the traditional Manx greeting, "Hey bye."
If you forget the name, yeah. Hey bye. No, it wasn't. But talking of Manx, it was wonderful to hear the King actually say Manx right here in Tynwald Court, and I, you're better judge than I am. His pronunciation seemed very good, but the sheer fact that he wanted to use Manx, and not just once or several words, even with a bit of humour, I thought it was a lovely touch. It really was. And again, I think it's recognition of where we are as a nation and our identity, which we should celebrate as much as possible. And when it's recognised and celebrated at that particular level, we should really be appreciative.
When October comes and you're sat with your slippers on and the equivalent of a pipe or whatever it might be, will you be tuning in to Manx Radio to listen to the next Tynwald?
Well, I will certainly be taking an interest. Of course, I'm bound to. I think we all do, don't we? But it's the level of interest really that we'll take. May not be listening to the whole of Tynwald, shall we say? But we'll all have our own individual interest and see how the members mature, I guess, and how they develop and how they can hopefully do what they all want to do, and that is do something that's going to benefit the island and the people they represent. So and see how they apply themselves, because it's all different styles. Again, getting back to politics, it's a real art and not a science.
And what do you think you're going to miss the most about this? Leaving the role.
That's a good question. What do you miss? I mean, I probably miss all sorts of aspects of it, and I won't realise that until I'm gone. Right now, there's just been, I think, with the build-up of Tynwald Day, the King's visit, and there's quite a lot of end of season stuff that I've got to deal with. So yes, I haven't really had time to think about it, if I'm honest. So probably when in October, that'll be the time when I'll be thinking what I missed. So we'll wait and see at that point, really, Phil.
And proudest moment, would you say, in terms of being president?
Wow. Just being elected, I think, at the time was the biggest proudest moment. And again, I just want to end by saying thank you really to Jackie, my children, Tilly and Ollie, and the whole family really for the support that I've had, and everyone that's been with me through this journey, because that's what it has been. It's been a real journey and an incredible honour, and so privileged and pleased. But I'll look forward to, I should say, that October when I sit down and have a real think about the whole thing.
Because of course family actually are the bit about being in political life that is rarely considered, but that is a massive role, isn't it, that your family play in being behind you.
100%, and as I say, that's the starting point. I speak to anyone who's thinking of standing. Is your family supportive? And as I say, I've been super fortunate in respect to that. So it's them I have to thank really for doing what I've managed to do, and see me through through thick and thin. Because politics is about, there are highs, there are lows, and you've got to recognise that. So thank again Jackie, Tilly, and Ollie, and respective halves there. So really appreciate that.
That was outgoing President of Tynwald, Laurence Skelly. A recent post on Facebook caught my eye, and I thought its author and his thoughts might make for an interesting interview. Be prepared to have your thoughts and prejudices gently provoked. Talking to Bradley Chambers, and you are one of the Manx bards. You're the current Manx bard, but that's not the reason you're on the programme. You're basically here in a personal capacity. Is that?
That is absolutely correct. Yes, I am the current Manx bard, but my concerns here are beyond the role of Manx bard, and it may well be that some of my predecessors may have a different view to me. But yeah.
Yeah. So this is not a representative of that particular role. This is something else. So yeah, I mean, I invited you in because you've made a quite a lengthy post on Facebook concerning the visit to the Isle of Man of Katie Hopkins. Now, I presume that you don't believe that people, just because they have views that you particularly don't agree with, that those people should be silenced?
I certainly don't. I think that we should encourage people to speak freely. We do have freedom of speech on the island, freedom of expression. That really isn't the issue for me. The issue is that the Gaiety Theatre is being used as a venue for Katie Hopkins to perform, I'm not sure that's the right word to use, but certainly appear. And I don't think that's appropriate. It's the cultural central hub of the island, the cultural epicentre of the Isle of Man. And Katie Hopkins being there is not in line with the stated values of Villa Gaiety or the Department for Education, Sport and Culture.
So what do you mean by that?
Well, Katie Hopkins, we have to remember who she is. She's a former brand and business consultant who became a reality TV star and media personality. She's made a career from spreading a message of hate and division. And in contrast to that, the theatre, the Isle of Man Arts Council, the Department of Education, Sport and Culture, each state that they have values. And it's my suggestion that they ought to adhere more closely to those stated values.
But Katie Hopkins, I mean, I'm sure she's big enough to defend herself, and if she wanted to come into one of our programmes, I'm sure she'd be welcome. But I imagine she would say, well, look, I'm saying, well, first of all, she describes herself as a comic, and secondly, she would probably say she's just saying what most people think.
Well, I hope that's not true. I think that the majority of people on the Isle of Man are decent and tolerant. It's certainly true that there's a section of society that isn't. It's true that there's a small minority that is outwardly and blatantly racist, and that's the same elsewhere in the British Isles as it is in the Isle of Man. I don't think she's saying what people are thinking at all. I think what she's really doing is homing in on specific minorities and actually causing discontent, discord, division, quite unnecessarily and for her own aims and agenda.
The department, though, Department of Education, which effectively runs the Villa Marina and the Gaiety Theatre, the department, on the one hand, has facilities that it is trying to hire out, and on the other hand, is quite strapped for cash. Can you understand why the department, it may be difficult for the department to say, actually, we're going to cancel a particular performer because we don't like their views?
Well, if the department and Villa Gaiety are open to enabling anybody to come over and say whatever they want, then I think they need to change their values or get rid of them, because at the moment they do state that they have specific aims, objectives and values. The language that Katie Hopkins uses, the things that she says, are certainly not in line with those stated values. So they either get rid of all their values or they adhere to them. It's one or the other.
And, well, tell us a bit more about the values that you think that she conflicts with.
The Department of Education, Sport and Culture states that its values are respect, integrity, caring, fairness and trust. Now, what do we make of that? Well, I would have thought everyone feeling safe, everyone feeling welcomed, fostering a diverse and welcoming and culturally rich community. I would have thought that those are the kind of values that the department and the villa have. Certainly that's what they say they have. And if that's the case, then having someone come and say the kind of things that Katie Hopkins has consistently said over a very long period of time, repeatedly, over and over again, that's in clear conflict with those values.
Does what you say, though, do anything to encourage or discourage perhaps people to actually go along to the show, do you think? Or do you think actually by highlighting this, you may be just doing a bit of extra advertising for her?
I doubt it will make any difference whatsoever. I think that Katie Hopkins will sell out if she hasn't sold out already. She generally does. People will always go and see Katie Hopkins. And in one sense, fair enough. If she wants to perform and people want to pay money and see her, then what is that to me? Except for the fact that she shouldn't be doing that at the Villa Gaiety. She can go and do that at the Legion as she has done before. What the Legion does is up to them. But for the Villa Gaiety, which, as I've said, is the cultural epicentre of the island, I think that they have to adhere to something much stronger than simply saying we'll open the door to anybody and we'll take your money no matter what. I think that's an utter disgrace, really.
I did ask the department to provide a spokesperson to come on the programme, and I actually got this statement, which, if you don't mind, I'll read out. The Villa Marina and Gaiety Theatre operate as public venues. The associated hire arrangements permits individuals, promoters and organisations to book the facilities subject to suitable availability and provided that the venue's terms and conditions, including any applicable legal obligations and health and safety requirements, can be met to the satisfaction of the department. The department considered a request to hire the Gaiety Theatre for a stand-up comedy performance by Katie Hopkins to take place in July 2026. Decisions relating to venue bookings are made in accordance with the relevant booking procedures and with due regard to legal, operational and health and safety considerations. The decision to proceed with the booking was made neither by the Isle of Man Arts Council nor directly by the Villa Gaiety team. The department does not endorse, promote or otherwise adopt the views or opinions of any individual performer, promoter, organisation or group hiring its venues. The use of a department-operated venue should not be construed as indicating support for or agreement with the views expressed by those associated with an event. As public venues, the Villa Marina and Gaiety Theatre may host a range of events and perspectives, and applications for hire must be considered fairly, consistently and in accordance with the relevant booking procedures, legal and operational requirements. I mean, that's a fairly comprehensive statement. It puts forward the department's position.
Well, I'm surprised that you think so. I think it's completely pathetic, utterly pathetic, really. There is gatekeeping, so I don't know who took responsibility for this decision, but somebody clearly did, because there is gatekeeping. And that gatekeeping ought to involve looking at, again, what is our mission statement, what do we stand for? Now, the Villa Gaiety has an audience and customer care charter. And this is online, this is on their website. This states that the aim of the Villa Gaiety is to make a positive contribution to the well-being and quality of life for our island community. And there's also a stated aim of wanting to attract and welcome individuals of all ages, abilities and backgrounds, and to promote an environment that is inclusive and respectful. Well, either that's not true, and they're not adhering to that, and they may as well get rid of it, or they don't know what Katie Hopkins stands for and what she's said, in which case they need to educate themselves, because it is their responsibility to do so.
Well, what we do know from the statement is neither the Isle of Man Arts Council nor directly the Villa Gaiety team made the decision to do this. So presumably that means it's the department in some guise?
Your guess is as good as mine on that count, but as I say, clearly somebody decided that this is acceptable and tolerable and should go ahead. I wonder if it was the head of culture and arts at the Gaiety or in the department, but somebody made that decision. I think they should be held to account for making that decision.
Okay. In principle, though, I mean, this issue kind of touches on a much broader issue, possibly the big issue of our day, which is how do we undertake public discourse? How do we talk to each other about ideas and thoughts? And humour is a way of doing that. And I know you don't think that Katie Hopkins is a comedian, but others that turn up think that she is. And she is trying to put forward ideas in a what she would describe as a humorous way.
Well, that's one way of putting it. I do stand by the comment that she isn't a comedian. She's not made a career out of being a comedian until everything else she's tried has failed, and now she's turned to this. And she tours around and says whatever she wants. But I think that people just don't understand what it is that she's said. Of course, I fully support there being public discourse, talking over ideas, thinking things through and bringing people together to have a discussion. But comedy, it shouldn't be about pointing at a minority and making fun of them. It shouldn't be about demeaning and belittling people. That, as I understand it, is not good comedy. In fact, it's not really comedy at all. It's simply bullying. Now, in respect of Katie Hopkins and what she's said, I can't go through everything, there isn't time, but examples include talking about a final solution. We know what final solution means. And she aimed that at British Muslims, and that led to her losing her job at LBC. She has lost a lot of jobs, by the way, and has been banned from a lot of media platforms, including the Murdoch Press and the Daily Mail, Mail Online. You have to be pretty extreme to be banned from these news outlets. And there's far more. So in respect of you remember the Grenfell Tower disaster, her response to that was saddy, saddy, Bernie, Bernie. For example, she's repeatedly referred to disabled people as spazzers. Please excuse my language. This is not me saying this. I'm quoting what she has said, and repeatedly said these things. Described Palestinians as filthy rodents. Talked about migrants as being cockroaches and feral humans. Is that the kind of language that is acceptable? Is that what we really stand for on the Isle of Man? I don't think it is. I think we're better than that.
So how do we engage with this? How do we... not necessarily talking about Katie Hopkins, because I doubt that Katie Hopkins would agree to do an interview with you, a debate with you. But even if she did, whether we would want to go down that route, I'm not sure. But the ideas that she espouses are not unique to her. There are other people in society that have those views. Some people will look back to the early days of television and the sort of comedy that appeared back in the 50s, 40s, 60s, even the 70s, and say, this is where we have always been in terms of humour and comedy. And actually, it's only the last 20 or so years, maybe 30 years, that we've become so constrained about what we can say in a comic setting that it's just gone too far.
Well, of course, we're not in the 1940s or the 50s or the 70s. I mean, those kind of programmes such as Mind Your Language, Love Your Neighbour were of their time. I don't think they were acceptable at the time, but they're certainly not acceptable now. Society moves on, it progresses, it develops. With free speech, there has to be a balance between protecting individuals to express themselves, having the independence and freedom to do that, but also protecting others from actual harm. We know where this leads. We've seen the riots that have taken place in the UK. We see exactly where division leads us. We know where it leads us in the worst extremes. Look at the history across Europe of where this leads us. So there have to be protections, and globally, societies and lawyers and scholars agree that there has to be a limit to free speech. It's not an absolute, it's a conditional right. And where to actually kind of draw that line is, of course, an endless complexity for societies. But there has to be a line, and I think it's blatantly obvious that Katie Hopkins doesn't just sail close to the wind or edge across that line. She somersaults and leaps across that line and lands a long distance away from it. I think it's pretty obvious that the kind of language that Katie Hopkins uses is not simply free speech. It's attacking people and demeaning people and being deliberately cruel and spreading a message of hate. My view is that that's wrong, and I don't think it's acceptable for Villa Gaiety and the department to enable this to happen.
How do we then, I'm talking now perhaps a little bit beyond the specifics here, how do we more generally have the debate that needs to be had, because what we seem to be having, particularly through social media, which unlike the sort of programme you're on at the moment, we have to try and be as balanced and fair and objective as possible, because that's what journalists, broadcasters do. On social media, what happens is you are fed with your prejudices, and people have their prejudices reinforced by that new form of communication, and it is relatively new. It's only a sort of 20-year-old at best. How do we break that down and actually get to a position where someone with the sort of views that Katie Hopkins has and someone with the views that you have can actually have a reasoned debate somehow, and maybe understand, both sides understand that there's middle ground somewhere, and there needs to be a little bit more tolerance in the world?
Well, I don't think it's me that's preaching a message of intolerance. Social media is clearly an enormous challenge, an enormous problem. Where you have to start is say what your values are. What is it you stand for? And values of decency and tolerance and respect should be at the heart of any offering from any media outlet, and they should adhere to them. And anybody that doesn't adhere to them should be kicked off. She was kicked off Twitter, of course, until Elon Musk took it over, called it X, and let her back in again. But what does Elon Musk stand for? We're talking about one individual, not living here, who simply facilitates someone like Katie Hopkins and others saying whatever they want, presumably because that matches with his own political and social agenda. So it's for governments to step in. It's for governments to legislate and intervene and say, no, these are our values, this is what we stand for, and this person isn't actually adhering to those values, because what they do is they victimise others. They use the power and influence that they have to demean and belittle others, and to spread messages of hatred, and also to create lies and perpetuate those lies. The problem with social media is you can just go there with an anonymous account. Nobody knows who you are, and you can say whatever you want. It doesn't have to be true. It doesn't have to be fair and reasonable and balanced. But, I bet if you meet most of these people and have a debate, they wouldn't say those kind of things, because people don't, do they, in reality? So I'm all for sitting down with someone and having a reasonable debate. I don't think that would be possible with Katie Hopkins, because I don't think that's what she intends to do in the first place.
Katie Hopkins has listened to this programme, and she wanted to have a debate with you. You'd be willing to do that? Oh,
bring it on. If you're listening, Katie, do come. Of course, as you hear, I'm a great fan. And I'm sure we'd have a fantastic debate, although I've got my own ideas about who'd come out best.
OK, another issue that has arisen in this last week, of course, is the visit of King Charles III, who is the Lord of Man and effectively is our head of state. It's another one of those areas, though, that people don't like to talk about. There are plenty of people in the Isle of Man who don't think that we need a royal family, and you've posted words that would indicate that you're one of them.
I am indeed, although I did have a personal invitation to meet the King, which I had to turn down, unfortunately, because it's not in line with my own political views. I don't think we need a monarchy. I don't think it's necessary. I think it's anachronistic. I think that also causes division. And I dislike Prince Charles personally.
And yet, he is our head of state, whether we think he should be or not. And the obvious solution is there's a general election taking place in September, and if you believe that there are sufficient numbers of people in the island that share your view, stand for election and get it changed.
Is that what I should do? Do you recommend that? I'll consider it under advice.
Well, it's not for me to recommend, but it is. I suppose I've suggested it, haven't I? But ultimately, most MHKs, I guess, get elected based on how many people they haven't upset. So issues such as whether we should continue to have effectively a monarch as our head of state never really get raised in election debates. Do you think they should be?
I absolutely think that they should be. I'm not convinced that the majority of the population on the Isle of Man are fervent royalists, to be honest, but I don't think that people like to come out and say that. I don't mind saying it personally, though.
In terms of where this or how this debate could be lighted up, I mean, you've kind of done it yourself a little bit. How do we consider this constitutional relationship with? I mean, it's particularly with the UK, isn't it? Because of course our head of state just happens to be their head of state. What are the? Yeah, maybe it was better if you, rather than going into that big constitutional question when we've hardly got any time left. But maybe if you explain why you think that we shouldn't have a royal family.
Well, I think it's curious that for the Isle of Man, which prides itself on its uniqueness and its difference from the rest of the British Isles, from the United Kingdom in particular, is so keen, apparently, to have a monarch over it. I just find that something of a contradiction. But of course, for me, it's not simply about the Isle of Man. It's about the whole of the British Isles, and of course, he's not just the king of the British Isles either. There's the Commonwealth. He's the king in lots and lots of places. I think it's an anachronism. I don't think it actually does anything positive. I don't think it's necessary. I think it's undemocratic. And I think it offers the opportunity for corruption as well. I simply think we should move on from an age of having kings and queens.
Yes, I suppose if we were to sit down with a blank sheet of paper and say, what should our constitution look like, you wouldn't put at the top of the list, let's pick a family who were particularly good at winning battles and make them rulers for life and their heirs and successors. Well,
indeed not. And of course, a family with links dating back to a French family, of course, from 1066. And then, of course, there's German and all kinds of other elements within the makeup of the royal family. But certainly not, no. I think Tony Benn put it best in terms of the hereditary principle. You wouldn't go to a dentist who says, well, I've had no training as a dentist whatsoever, but don't worry, my father was a dentist, so you should be absolutely fine with me. There is no logical reason as to why someone should be simply born into a family and become the head of state. It is a nonsense.
And a nonsense that, can you see any chance that, as you described, nonsense is ever going to change?
Yeah, I think it is changing because tolerance of the monarchy is lessening. There's still a lot of support for the monarchy. I'm not arguing otherwise. I think what will happen over time is we will have a toned down monarchy that will be very similar to the types of monarchy that we see in the Netherlands, in Scandinavia, across different parts of Europe. I think that's probably far more tolerable than what we have at the moment, with such a lot of money and property and land concentrated into the hands of one individual.
I mean, people who support the monarchy would say, well, yes, but look at all the other systems around the world. None of them work as well as our monarchy does.
I don't know which systems they're referring to, but I think other countries would disagree very strongly. Certainly, I'm not aware of any other countries wanting to model themselves on what we have. I've not seen France wanting to reinstall their monarchy. Egypt has managed perfectly well without the pharaohs. Generally speaking, countries have moved on from unelected heads of state.
So, in your ideal world, what would we have?
We'd have a democracy, and it is not democratic to have a head of state who has quite a lot of power, actually. There's this misnomer that the monarchy has no power. It does. It has residual power. It's very, very much hidden power. For example, bills, pieces of legislation that may impact upon the interests of the king, he does not have to consent to. So there's a thing called royal consent as well as royal assent. And there are multiple examples of the king intervening or attempting to intervene in political decision making. There's nothing democratic about that.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your views, and they are your personal views.
They are indeed my personal views. Yeah, I'm not representing anyone here, just me.
Well, as Bradley Chambers suggested, the Katie Hopkins event has completely sold out, so there are clearly enough Manx people who don't share his views. Presumably, most of those people are Isle of Man taxpayers whose tax money also helps pay for the Gaiety, and who are therefore entitled to watch a show of their choice too. Now, what are your thoughts? Is government breaching its principles by allowing the event to proceed? Should people have a right to say whatever they think, regardless of how hurtful that may be to others? Is part of the cause of the divided society in which we live the inhibition of being able to say what you think? Let me know your thoughts on the programme by contacting Phil Gorn at manxradio.com, and please get in touch if you have any ideas for future shows. Don't forget this programme is available as a podcast. I'm Phil Gorn, Guramayasun Geishakrum. Thanks for listening.